In this video, I'm going to quickly get you up to speed on Visual Studio Code and Git. Now, at this point, you should have already installed those two programs, so Visual Studio Code and Git. There are some reference material that you can look at to get it installed. It gives you the links to install it and everything. So I'm going to assume that you already have that installed, and then we're going to go over the basics of how to create a new project, add it to Git, and then put it on GitHub. So here we go. So right now I'm in Visual Studio Code, and we want to create a new project. Now I'm going to do this from the command line because you need to get used to using the command line, but you could come up here and say file, new file, or create a new workspace or whatnot. But what we want to do is create a new folder, so just a normal folder on the computer. And right now I have this location up, d:/source full stack course. Now this is where I want to create my new folder. Normally, if you're used to using files and folders, you could come here and say new folder. But what I'm going to do is do it from the command line. Now, the key thing to know here is that you want to create a new folder that's completely empty. Don't open a folder like Documents or Desktop with Visual Studio Code. If you do that, you're going to run into a lot of really bad problems. So make sure you create a new folder whenever you start a new project, and then we're going to add that to Git and then add it to GitHub. So let's create a new folder. So I'm going to use make directory, and I'm going to call it Git test. And then I'm going to navigate into that directory with CD. So that means change directory. So make directory, mkdir, and CD change directory. That will get us into this folder here. Now, the reason I want you to use the command line is because you have to use the command line for Git for a lot of things. You can use Visual Studio, but you need to learn how to use the command line. You're going to use it a lot throughout the course. But I don't want you to focus on the ins and outs and details of what's happening here. I just want you to understand how to get going. And the reason for that is that you're going to need to be able to push code up to GitHub so that an instructor can look at it and help you out whenever you have issues. So now we've got this new folder. We want to open it in Visual Studio Code. So we'll come over here and say File, Open Folder. And I'm going to find that source folder. I have it right here, Git test. Select folder, and then it's going to open. So right now there's no files in here at all, which means that we need to create a file, but this is how you get in there. You also, from the command line, can type code dot once you're in that folder, and it will open a new Visual Studio Code window for you. Let's do that. All right, so now that we're in here and we have our Git test folder open, I'm going to create a new file. And I'm just going to call it readme.md and say, this is my first project. All right, I'm going to save that. And an MD file is just a markdown file. Whenever you go to GitHub, your readme.md will be the first file or the text that shows up on your repository, which we're going to look at right now. All right, so we have this file in here. Now if we come over to our command line again, so I'm going to clear this out, I can type git status usually, and this isn't going to work, but it's going to say fatal no git repository. If this happens, that means you need to create a new repository with git and init. Now all this is in the reference material. You can look at it. I just wanted to have a video so you can watch me do it, and then the reference material might make more sense. So now I'm in this folder. You got to make sure you're in the right folder. Don't be in Documents or Desktop or anything like that. And we're just going to git init, and this is going to initialize a new repository with Git. And Git just tracks our source code, and you're going to learn all about it later, but for now, just know that you want to do this to track your source code. So now when I type git status, it's going to say, hey, there's this new file that I'm not tracking yet. And I'm just going to say git add, and I'm going to put a dot, and that means add everything in the directory that I'm in right now. Now when I say git status, it'll be green, like this down here. And then I want to git commit it. And I'm going to say first file. And you want to put a message here that it describes whatever you're checking in. So this isn't a great message. But whenever you're editing your code, you'll be like, edited that button and made it work or something like that. You want to keep track of every little thing that you're doing. So as you get things working, you want to get in the habit of adding the files, committing, pushing over and over and over again. So right now we've committed this to the repository. Now if I say git status, it's going to say nothing to commit, working tree clean. This is good. That means that we have a good project that's been saved to Git and it's ready to be something to do with it. So now the Git init, you're only ever going to run once. You don't have to run it anymore. So if I come over here and say, more text, and I save it, I'm going to say git status now. And it's going to say, hey, there's some changes here. So I say git add dot and git commit -m updated file. All right. So now git status will say back to working tree clean. But notice I didn't do git init that time. So every time I make a change that I want to save to Git, I have to come in here, add it, and then commit it. Now we can also do that from within Visual Studio. You'll see over here what happens. So now if I say more text, and I save this, there's going to be a little thing that happens right here, and this is your source control. And you can actually come in here and just say, stage changes like that, and then we're going to commit the changes, and then put a message in here, more changes. And then that does the exact same thing. So if you want to do it here, you can. It's a little easier, but you need to know how to do it from the command line as well. So now that we've made these changes, we need to push them up to GitHub. So you've only made these changes locally at this point. But when we push it to GitHub, that'll give the instructors and me and everybody else access to see your files and help you out if you need any help. All right, so I'm going to open a new window here. I'm going to go to GitHub. And you'll see that I'm logged in. I'm going to create a new repository, and I'm going to call it Git test. And that's all you got to do. Put a description, whatever. You don't even have to do that. But just name it whatever you're going to name it. So I've saved that, and you'll get some instructions here that you need to know. So if you want to create a new repository from command line, or if you want to push an existing repository, it doesn't really matter because we've already done these things. What we're going to do is take this line right here. It's in both of these sections. And we're going to copy it. Okay. And then we're going to, you actually could copy this whole thing if you wanted, but let's just copy one line at a time so you can see what's happening. We're going to go back to our command line. We're going to paste that in. And what this is going to do is connect our local Git repository that we created to GitHub. So I'll say that. And then if we go back, we'll see I have another line that we need to do. Git push -u origin master. So let's copy that and paste it. And now Git push is what pushes it up to GitHub. So that's what's happening right now. So let's go back over to the browser and let's refresh here. Now look at that. Here's our README and here's the text from our README. So now let's make another change. Let's add another file. Let's add an index.html. And I'm just going to put some stuff in here. You can put whatever you want. I'm going to make it an actual HTML file with hello world. Boom. All right, so I save that. I'm going to go to the command line, and I'll clear this out. If I do git status, you'll see that I have a new file there waiting to be pushed. I'm going to clear it out just so you see everything. So I do git add, git commit -m, added index.html, and then I'm going to do git push. And there we go. We're going to go back over to GitHub, refresh, and you'll see our file is there now as well. So you only have to do that part in GitHub one time where you add the remote and then you do the git push -u origin master. You only have to do that once. Once your project is all set up, the only 3 commands that you're ever going to do are git add, git commit, and then git push. And you want to do this fairly often because this saves your work and it pushes it up. And what we can do on GitHub, what it does is that in our project here, we have these commits. And you can see here's all of the text, those notes that I was putting in. First file, updated file, more changes, added index.html. So now from here on my commits, I can go back and see what my code looked like at any point in time. So if I click this commit, I can see what was changed. I added this line to this readme.md file. And that gives us this history of what's been happening. So if you make a change and it breaks something, then you can come back in here and see what happened. So as far as Visual Studio Code, Git, and GitHub are concerned, these are the only things that you need to know. There's reference material that goes over all of this, but I wanted to make a short little video so that you could see it in action. I know it can be really confusing the first time that you do this, but you'll get used to just git add, git commit, git push, git add, git commit, git push. You're going to do it all the time throughout the history as you become a software developer. So just get used to it, keep doing it, and happy coding.